Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Security Nuggets Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley, and as always, I'm very happy to see that you're welcome. Now, today we are going to be unpacking on money matters. That's right. We're going to be talking about budget allocation in regards to the process of outsourcing and procuring security services and equipment. Now, once an organization has laid down its goals in the procurement process, that is, they have enlisted and outlined the things that they want to achieve or the things that they aim to achieve at the end of the process. Now it's time to get into the procuring process itself. And one of the things that this process must entail is allocating a budget for that security measure, that security system, or that security equipment. How much is an organization willing to estimate or put aside or set aside for the investment of that security service that it's outsourcing, of that security equipment that is outsourcing? Now, that is part of what we're going to be discussing today, and I'm very excited about this. And I'm hoping that by the end of the episode, you will be able to take home one or two very important insights for you to implement moving forward when you are outsourcing or procuring services for your organizations or equipment in reference to security. Now, first and foremost, when you think budget allocation, when you're thinking of funds that are going to be allocated towards a security service or equipment, we are thinking of how is that budget going to look like? How much is the organization willing to put aside and spare for that goal, all right? And obviously, this is very much influenced by the leadership's attitudes towards the security function. Are they looking at security as a budgetary function that just consumes and doesn't add value to the organization, which is very much what I like to call a narrow focus lens? Security is just boots and guns and gates, that's it, or are they looking at security on a broader lens, whereby security is a value function, whereby it enhances on the organization resilience, and it also helps the organization to increase on its business continuity, all right? So that when incidents happen, the organization is able to recover very quickly and move forward, all right? Because it had already anticipated these threats and it had already mitigated against these threats. So when these threats target an organization and they actualize, the organization doesn't cripple. It very much gets up and moves on with the business. So how does leadership how are the leadership's attitude and perceptions towards security that actually to an extent affects on the budget allocation? Okay, now we're looking at an ideal situation where security is not being looked at as a budgetary function, right? This function that just consumes money and doesn't bring much value to the organization. No, we're looking at a security as a valuable function within the business organization that actually helps the organization achieve its ultimate goals, okay? And by the way, it is very important to note that the manner at which security professionals or security experts in organizations, the manner at which they demonstrate the value of some of these security measures to leadership very much also influences on whether these security investments are going to be approved or not approved, whether they're going to be approved or declined, okay? It matters how you demonstrate the value of these security measures, okay? If you're demonstrating these security measures from what I call a fear, uncertainty, doubt point of view, FUD, whereby you're using fear, uncertainty, and doubt to prove a point to management, like, look, we must invest in this security measure because if we don't, this bad thing is going to happen to the organization. Now, if that is the approach you're using to demonstrate the value of a certain security investment, that you're going wrong. You're going wrong, okay? Because by using fear and uncertainty and doubt, you're not building a financial case towards your security measure and why it warrants it being invested upon by your organization. So don't use FUD, don't use fear and uncertainty and doubt to prove a point as a security expert, all right? Instead, build your case from a sound financial point of view, whereby you're using these principles, okay? Now we're going to start off by highlighting the two main critical principles that any financial budget allocation towards security should be based upon. Now, one, you should have it should meet the security measure or the security investment that we are going for. Should be able to meet what we call the risk-based approach, all right? Whereby it is being referred or it meets the criteria for a risk that has high priority. Now, risks that have high priority are risks that when they actualize, their impact is projected to be of high severity. They can cause a lot of damage to an organization, and we are talking of direct or consequential damage, okay? So that is a high risk, okay? Now, a high risk is also a risk that you, as a security professional or as an organization, you have estimated that, yes, this is actual a target threat to an organization. It is bound to happen, okay? And the baseline controls that we have in place are either inadequate or they are non-existent. So the organization is very vulnerable, right? So this becomes a threat of high priority that warrants mitigation, okay? So by us prioritizing on this risk and setting aside a budget and allocating funds to implement in whatever security services or equipments or measures that have been recommended, then we are actually using that risk-based approach in the budgetary allocation, all right? Now, for instance, let's take an organization that has a threat target of, say, ransomware. It is an organization that has a lot of proprietary data within its servers, okay? So it's definitely a target to an adversary who is aiming in infiltrating and accessing that proprietary data and information. Now, if an organization is target to a ransomware attack, which is a cyber attack, and they have put in effective firewalls to protect their servers, or they have invested in critical defenses to protect their servers, okay? Then they are not exposed, okay? But again, it depends on how good are your protection measures. Are they baseline? Are they adequate? Are they inadequate? Are they insufficient? You look at those things and then you estimate. If the controls are inadequate, then we need to do something about it, because if we don't, then we are vulnerable. We are vulnerable to attack. So the risk of a ransomware attack is a risk that warrants to be referred as a risk of high priority to the organization, okay? So that was just one of the examples, okay? Because you're looking at, if we don't mitigate effectively against a ransomware attack as an organization, then we are exposing ourselves to a ransomware attack where the impact of that attack could cost us a lot in reference to the bottom line. We may end up losing a lot of customers. We may end up exposing our customers' information, which is proprietary information, and we may be exposing ourselves to litigation and suits, legal issues. And we may also be exposing ourselves to extreme reputational damage, okay? So you look at the degree of impact. If the degree of impact is severe and that risk has not been effectively mitigated upon, then it actually passes that criteria of being referred to as a high priority risk, okay? So when you're doing your budget allocation, you use that approach, a risk-based approach, all right? Because again, we don't want to allocate budget to risks that of low priority, whereas we are neglecting risks that of high priority. No, we need to have a balance. We need to meet a delicate balance there, okay? So we are not going to invest funds as an organization. We're not going to invest in security measures that are supposed to mitigate against very low risks that are of negligible impact, whereby the impact towards the organization is so insignificant, the organization could not even feel much if this risk was to actualize. No, we are going to redirect our budgetary resources to risks that actually meet that criteria of high priority risk. Okay, that is one of the principles that your budget needs to be based on. Now, the other principle is we want to ensure that the budget allocation that we invest in whatever security system or service or equipment meets the return on investment threshold. It meets the return on investment, okay? What does this mean? This means that we have used a quantitative system. We are quantifying the benefit of the security investment to demonstrate its value. We are saying, for instance, look, over the last 12 months, or rather last year, we incurred losses of maybe the organization incurred losses towards its critical assets of about, say, what, $5,000, okay? And now we are proposing this security measure in terms of a service or an equipment because we are projecting that while we invest in it, we shall be able to cap those losses and bring them down to $1,000 a year. Okay? So you're justifying the value and the gain of that security investment, okay? So that is another principle that we definitely need to be guided by when we're looking at the budget allocation, all right? Now, let's understand the costing, okay? Now, when you're looking at budget allocation, you also need to understand the type of costs that a business organization undertakes, all right, or incurs. And you need to understand where security falls under. What type of cost does security fall under? It's very important because, look, we're looking at the budget. And the security budget is not going to be temporary. Some of the things we're investing in security-wise are very long-term. They will go on for a year, more than a year. So this is a cost that is going to be within the organization on the long-term basis, okay? So we need to understand the costing. It falls under what type of cost? Now, let's delve into the type of cost that organizations have or incur. Now, one of the costs is the variable cost. Okay, variable cost. It's a variable cost because it varies. This is a cost that varies in reference to the output. Okay. Now, when the output is different, it varies. Okay. Now, for instance, let's assume an organization is a manufacturing organization, okay? And it requires raw materials to get to manufacture and produce its merchandise, the end product. Now, assuming that the demand of the end product is low, then it means that the cost incurred in raw materials is going to be low. The company would incur a lot in securing or outsourcing raw materials because the demand is low for the end product, okay? And vice versa. If the demand is high for the end product or the merchandise that the organization is producing, then the organization will have to invest in more raw materials for them to be able to produce or manufacture the end product because it is required in a higher the end product is required in a higher scale, okay? So that is why it's called a variable cost, because it varies. It varies depending on those type of factors, all right? The supply and the demand, all right? Now, the second type of cost is the semi-variable cost, all right? Now, with this kind of cost, it varies, yes, but not in entirety. It varies to some extent, okay? But it has a baseline cost, all right? Whether the output is higher or low, it has a constant. It has a constant baseline cost that doesn't change, okay? All right. Now, for instance, an organization has an increased, it has an increased in production or in operation. Okay. And it is using a product, say it's using fuel in its production, or it's using energy in its production. Okay. Now, when it has high production, the cost of fuel or energy goes up. Or when it has high operation, the cost of fuel or energy goes up, okay? When the production or operation is low, then the cost of fuel is low, but the company still needs to meet the baseline cost, the standard cost of that fuel and fuel, all right? It needs to meet that cost of energy and fuel. That is why it's being referred to as a semi-variable cost, okay? The third cost and the last cost that we're going to highlight is the fixed cost. Okay, now these are costs that are constant. They remain constant in spite of the output. Whether the organization is high on production or high in operation or low in production or low in operation, the cost remains constant. It does not change. These are fixed costs. Now, examples of fixed costs are rent cost. All right. If an organization is paying rent for its premises of operation, that rent doesn't go up and down. It is constant. It remains. Whether the business is high, whether the business operation or manufacturing or whatever whatever the core area of expertise is, whether it goes up and down, the rent remains constant. Okay, so that is a fixed cost. Similarly to salaries. The salaries you pay your staff as an organization, they don't go up and down. They don't fluctuate. No, they remain constant, okay? So that's another example of a fixed cost. Now, security falls under this category. Security falls under this category of fixed costs because security doesn't go up and down. It also remains constant. And that is why it is very important when a business is thinking about investing in a security measure, whether it is in form of a service or an equipment, they need to think long and hard and process because the implication is going to be long-term, okay? They are going to meet the cost on a long-term basis. So they need to be certain that, look, we really want to invest in this, and we are hoping that if we invest in this, there's going to be value to that investment. That is why it is very important to really deliberate on the process of budget allocation so that you can get it right, okay? Now, having deliberated on the type of cost and understanding the types of cost, then we need to understand the security expenditure, okay? Now, when we're talking of security services and equipment, now let's just mention some of the few. Let's just mention some of the few security services and equipment that companies find themselves outsourcing or procuring. We are talking of manpower services that have to do with guards, dog handlers. We are talking of maybe executive protection officers, if you have assets in form of personnel, So when we are talking of controllers, if you're having a surveillance system or a security central point of view, you need You need controllers in that station to monitor surveillance and all that. Uh, if you're talking of equipment, you're thinking of CCTV, you're talking of alarms, you're talking of access control, etc., etc. Now, having established that security is a fixed cost within a business organization, now we need to understand in its expenditure, where can a security investment fall under? We can invest in security on a one-off basis, whereby this is an outlay cost, or what we can call a capital expenditure, or in short, CapEx, whereby an organization just anticipates to spend on this security investment on a one-off basis. Some of the expenses that fall under this category are, for instance, security equipment. Most of the times, security equipment have a high CapEx. They have a high CapEx. They require a high initial investment. This is because you're buying into the equipment, you're buying into the software, you're paying for installation and support or any training that is required. So usually this is a high cost, okay? Now, the second category that a security investment can fall under is under an outlay, or what we call a recurring cost, okay? So an organization is not looking into just investing one-off. The cost is going to be ongoing. This is also referred to as an operating expenditure, or in short, OPEX, okay? Some of the services that take this form may be manpower services. For instance, when you're talking of having guards or security officers, the organization is going to invest in these on a recurring and ongoing basis, because you're spending on a monthly basis, okay? The cost is being incurred on a monthly basis, okay? And the best way to actually estimate the cost in CapEx or OPEX is by doing a projection of maybe the last 12 months, or a projection of the next 12 months. You do it like on an annual basis, okay? That way you can have good tangible figures to work with, okay? You estimate, okay, we are looking into investing into maybe security, having to contract a company for security guards, okay? Now, over the next 12 months, how much are we anticipating to spend in this cost, okay? That way you can have that projection, and you can be able to compare it with your organization income and the expenditure financials. That way you can see, is this a cost that the organization can afford? All right. Is this a cost that an organization can afford? Okay. Those are the questions that you need to be asking yourself in this phase of budgetary allocation. All right. Now, some security measures and services have both costs. They have a higher initial cost of CapEx, and they have an ongoing cost of OPEX, okay? Especially equipment that, yes, they require that initial installation cost, but they have that ongoing cost. Or, for instance, if you are investing in security equipment on a lease basis, where you're not buying, you're leasing the equipment, okay? The concept of leasing is that you get to pay every month, okay? So that the company leasing you the equipment can get to make its profit through the monthly ongoing cost, okay? So some equipment have both costs. They have the CapEx and the OPEX. So these are all things you need to be looking at when you're looking at the budgetary process, in the process of securing security services and equipment. And budgeting becomes one of the processes, and it becomes a very important process, which we need to focus and prioritize on, so that we can get it right. All right. Now, next episode, we are going to be unpacking on another process under the process of secure outsourcing and procuring security services and equipment. And I'm looking forward to that. In the meantime, I hope that you have taken something of value. You've taken something of value home, something insightful. And kindly, if you found this enlightening, like, share, subscribe. If you've not already done that, I'd appreciate that. And until our next episode, I've been your host, Ashley, and thank you very much for watching, and goodbye for now.